Hi, I'm Kenny Klaus, and this is State 48 Homeowner.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the State 48 Homeowner Podcast. And there's a couple times a year that you get some mail that you might not always understand, and one of those comes from the assessor's office. And so today we've got a special guest, Maricopa County Assessor Eddie Cook. How are you doing?
Good to meet you, Scott.
Thank you so much for coming on here. I know when it comes time for elections, I'm sure that there's sometimes that you just have to explain to people what you are running for.
Well, you know, it's funny because when I go out in the public to speak, everyone thinks I'm the guy who collects the taxes.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Like, no. That's the treasurer. He's the bad guy. I just enable him.
So you give him the amounts that he is able to tax.
Yeah. So basically, it's kind of funny because property tax law in Arizona, to me, I think is probably the most complex in the country, if you think about it. So a lot of folks don't understand that school districts, municipalities, the county, fire, you name it, there's all these little, bits of governing bodies that have authority to, apply property tax rates.
And
they take a little bit.
And the boundaries are different.
Yeah. So they just, it's very complex. So I always blame it on the treasurer. He's the bad guy that collects.
And we see that where our office is here in East Mesa. It's in the city of Mesa. It's Gilbert Schools. And so there's a lot of times that we will, when we market properties here, we'll let people know, hey, it's Gilbert Schools, Mesa taxes.
Exactly. And the other thing I always tell people, did you get my Valentine's card in February? And everyone starts laughing and all that stuff. It's kind of fun. So
let's talk about what the assessor's office does. So you've got a bunch of spreadsheet type people that are looking at the numbers, and I think you said that about half of your staff is appraisers.
Absolutely. So the real role of our office is to be fair and equitable to all taxable properties in our county. So that is the only role that we have. So we just value all the properties based upon actual sales data, and we have years and years and years of data that we've collected. So we have this massive mainframe computer that keeps all the data, and we use all that data statistically to basically help value all taxable properties fairly and equitably.
And Maricopa County, how many parcels are you valuing every year?
That's a great question because we have 300 full-time employees that's looking at over 1.7 million parcels in Maricopa County. We are the fourth largest county in the country. And that's wild to think that 300 full-time employees have to do this every year. And we have a really wonderful business system in how to do that.
You've got 300 employees.
Yep.
And you just got a award.
Absolutely. So I've been in the office now for 3.5 years. So I got appointed back in Valentine's Day of February of 2020 and got elected that year in 2020. And now I've been serving in my first term. It's been a great joy to just look at the business processes and implement a transformation in our office that's very one that changes the culture where the team is now feeling very valued and very important. But we also
and you have a strategic plan in place.
We have a strategic business plan in place, which has never been in there before. And all the things that I have brought in from the private sector, and even on my time with the Gilbert Town Council, we've just began to implement this wonderful strategy to make our office very efficient and very effective. So my goal was always to transform the office to be a high-performance team, very efficient, very effective at the lowest cost of taxpayer, but create that culture that supports all of that. And then, after 3.5 years, we received an award this last week as being one of the top employers in the state of Arizona. And it's just fantastic.
And that's not governmental. That's
everybody. I mean, in fact, we were the only governmental agency competing with the private sector.
Well, congratulations.
It's just fantastic. So they had 5,000 submissions, and they gave 137 businesses that top employer award. And we're one of the 137.
Great job. So people get that little love letter in February.
My Valentine's card.
So let's decode.
Yes.
There's a couple different figures on there.
Yep.
There's a limited property value and there's the full cash value. So what do those mean?
So that's probably one of the greatest mysteries in Arizona's property tax codes. What in the heck do these numbers mean? Mm-hmm. So you'll see something called...
Not only what they mean, but I think people just wonder, okay, what do they mean, but what do they mean to me?
Yes, as a property owner.
As a property owner. And also as a taxpayer and a consumer of county benefits.
Exactly. Because I see like this acronym called the FCV and another acronym called the LPV. I have no clue what that means. I Google this and it still doesn't mean anything to me, right? So let's provide some clarity. So when you get that Valentine's card from me, you'll see these two acronyms, FCV and LPV. So let's talk about the first one, FCV, full cash value. So folks think, oh, that full cash value must be what I see in Zillow, right? I go to Zillow, I see my full, my price of my home, and that's got to be the same. But then you say, well, that number doesn't match what Zillow has.
Well, this estimate doesn't always match anything.
Well, the funnier story that people don't realize is that when we actually do that assessment of or valuation of your home, when you get that card from us, your taxes are not until you don't pay them until 2 years later. Mm-hmm. So we're always kind of 2 years behind what the market really is when you actually pay your taxes. But the full cash value is our attempt of looking at all the sales data literally like in your neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And we kind of figure out the average of that, all those sales data for all these years and where that's at. And we calculate the full cash value. And that's typically about 15% kind of below the market in general. So because we're kind of 2 years behind, it's always safe for us to be a low, 15% lower, because we don't know what the market's going to do. No. Because if the market decided to tank and our full cash value was above the market, I'll get a lot of phone calls from a lot of angry property owners.
Well, I also think that there's a lot of times that people will say, "Oh, I don't know why Zillow says this, or Redfin says this, or you guys and your HomeBot says this," and they want to see that property value be as high as possible, except on your document. Now we want to see it as low as possible.
Well, let's just say it's lower than the market. Yeah. So that's a good thing, at that point. So that's the full cash value. The other acronym on that Valentine's card is the LPV, the limited property value. This is probably the most confusing value on that card. The limited property value is actually a statutory calculation that the assessor's office has nothing to do with in calculating that number. So it's this crazy formula based upon the full cash value and a whole bunch of other factors and, ratios and so forth. And you get this thing called the limited property value. And that number is what our property taxes are based on. So based upon the kind of class of property you have, there's a ratio that is factored into your limited property value. So for residential, you'll see this thing called 10% or 0.1. So basically we take your limited property value of your home, you multiply by 0.1, and then you actually get this other number, which is actually used as part of your property tax calculations from that point. So The assessor's office, I have no dial, no lever, no switch that I can do to change your limited property value. That one's fixed. Now, the assessor's office can adjust your full cash value, but the limited property value is locked in.
And then, so part of that formula comes from Prop 117.
Yes. So back, again, another confusing part of property tax law was back in the year 2012, there were a bunch of individuals that felt like property values were going through the roof in Arizona. In fact, the old law stated that your valuation of your home could go up to as much as 10% year to year. And a lot of folks were like upset because they saw property taxes probably going up pretty high as well.
And for some people, for some reason, people don't really like paying taxes.
I know, and I'm with you, you know. So a bunch of folks looked at California. There was a proposition back in the late 70s called Prop 13.
Yeah, and my parents are actually beneficiaries of that. They bought their house in 1972.
And many folks that own property prior to that Prop 13 benefited from that. In fact, the interesting thing in California is you could deed that property to your kids and they could still maintain that very, very low number, right? So Arizona looked at that Prop 13 and came up with a better version of that. So that became Prop 117. And what Prop 117 did, it was voter approved. Basically it said that all of the property taxes that are all calculated are now going to be based upon the limited property value. Back then there was kind of a combination of full cash value, limited property value, but now it's all going to be based upon limited property value. And the maximum increase of your limited property value can only go up 5%.
5% a year.
Instead of 10%. So it was sold to the public, hey, instead of 10%, you really want 5%. And everyone was like, yeah, well, you know, that's what we'll take. And the theory behind it was they wanted property owners to have a predictable rate increase. I mean, that was the whole thing. This up and down with property taxes was crazy. And they said, let's just make it where it's predictable. And that was really the selling point. Drop it to 5%, but it's predictable. So in 2015 is when that got implemented. So all properties that were available or built or, you know, at that point in 2015 got a new line in the sand as it relates to valuation. So all 15 county assessors from 2015 on, that's how our property taxes are being based upon. And, you know, and I'm going to say that as the full cash value has been skyrocketing, the limited property value has been trying to catch the full cash value at 5% chunks. And again, it's predictable and it's nice for policymakers when they set the levies that they understand what's going on in their communities. So that's probably the most confusing part about Prop 117 is what does it do to my property taxes?
This video is brought to you by Klaus Team Real Estate Solutions. The Klaus Team is different. With the Klaus Team, you have someone on your side. Where you live and make memories is important. We have more unique strategies than anyone else to help you accomplish what matters most to you. We can help you with traditional real estate as well as other options such as our lease purchase programs. We can help you buy first then sell, and we can bring you instant offers. We're here to help our neighbors achieve the American dream and help them build wealth through home ownership. For more info or to start your home search, visit us online at klausteam.com.
Now, when I tell folks here in Maricopa County, we saw this last year every property have a 5% increase to their LPV. So 95% of them got that. So now if I have a city council that says, I'm going to hold your property tax rate flat, I'm a good council member because I'm not increasing your property tax rate. It's flat. Well, what the public doesn't know is that the valuation went up 5%, and keeping the rate flat, guess what? Your property taxes are going to go up 5%, even though they said, oh, I kept it flat.
Yeah.
And when folks hear about that, they're like, what? I say, that's what happens. So you want your policymakers to actually lower the property tax rate because your valuation is going to go up 5%. Yeah. And that's kind of a hard thing to follow and try to keep track. It's very, very complex. But that's kind of the easy way of talking about it. So.
And then so the treasurer's office then they take your numbers.
Yes.
And they're the ones that calculate the actual tax based on
right.
where you are in your municipality, your school districts, all these kinds of things.
Yeah, so the treasurer is basically his spreadsheet. He gets our evaluation, and then he captures all these different property tax rates given by the county, the school districts, the city councils,
water,
and he kind of accumulates them into one big number, and you get that one big tax bill, from the treasurer's office every year. So
yeah, and I think one of the best things there on what you talked about, just predictability, especially as we look to people who are retired and most people that are paying property taxes now, it's homeowners, it's not renters, and homeowners, most people have a mortgage. Yeah. And so most people are not actually writing the check.
Exactly.
It's in an escrow account.
Yeah.
It's when you've gotten to that point in life where you've paid off your mortgage and now it is a sizable check that you have to physically write.
Yeah, it is.
People, landlords that have multiple properties providing housing for people, and when they've paid it out, those are multiple large checks. So it's nice to be able to predict that.
Yeah, and I always tell folks, if you lived like in Chicago or, New York, and you had property, what your property taxes were, right? Mm-hmm. And when you come to Arizona, our property taxes are still probably the lowest in the country. If you think about
and that's one of the reasons why, and we saw that with Allied Moving put out their report in Arizona in 2022 was the #1 inbound state, and a lot of that comes with cost of living. A big piece of that cost of living is our low property taxes and reasonably low sales tax all coupled together. Usually in a lot of states you'll either have super high property taxes and low sales tax or vice versa. Right. And here we moderate both of them, and it makes it. And it's going to be interesting
this coming tax year, because this year, we kind of have this new flat tax income flat tax, right, at 2.5%, I believe. So that's now being implemented, right? Mm-hmm. So how much money is that really going to generate for the state and shared amongst all the different municipalities? Does property tax rates adjust to that based upon this flat tax for income? So it's going to be really interesting to see in the next couple of years how that all balances out with that. Are we going to see sales tax increases or decreases because of the, flat tax for income? So we'll see how that works.
Now, when we look at the assessor's office and the numbers, is everything just even, or are there some exemptions?
Yeah, let's talk about it. So, in our office, we're obviously trying to value all properties in their class fairly and equitably, right? Mm-hmm. And that's our #1 role. But there are, in state statute, a couple of, we'll call it exemptions for senior citizens, like, well, I shouldn't say an exemption. They have what they call a senior citizen freeze. So based upon, like how much money your retirement is and how much you value your home is, you as a senior citizen could qualify. As much as I would like those limits to be higher, so more can qualify, that's a, legislature activity. But based upon the current limits, if you qualify, then we can actually freeze your property valuation for, I believe, 3 years, and so forth. So that's one thing that's a benefit for senior citizens. And then if you are disabled, as a widower or widow or even a veteran. There's also exemptions for those three classes of individuals because of your disability, where, again, if you met the thresholds or below the thresholds, you can apply an exemption to us for your property. Okay. So those are kind of like the two bigger kind of benefits. Does an
exemption affect the LPV? Does it affect?
Yep, that's what it does. Okay. It just locks it in, and whatever you had paid, or whatever was based upon when you filed in and got accepted, that's going to be your baseline for that.
So it's not going to see that up to 5% increase.
Yeah, that's what it's going to hold. Yeah.
All right. So how do people leverage those? How do they?
They can go to the Maricopa County Assessor's website.
And so they just go on there and they can fill out some paperwork?
Yeah, so they'll just go to the website. Up on the top, there's kind of some pull-down menus, and they can just find the one for the exemptions or senior freeze.
Perfect.
Or they can call our office.
And talk to nice people.
Talk to nice people, and we'll be able to help them through that as well.
Talk to nice people that like their job, because it's a great place to work. So if a homeowner disagrees with the numbers you came up with, what is the process for dealing with that?
Yeah, so after they get my Valentine's card in February, there's a 60-day window where a property owner can appeal. So they can go to our website, and we have an online portal for the appeal. That would be my recommendation. That's an easy thing to do. If they feel like they want to download a hard copy of the appeal form, they can do that, and they can mail it to us.
And what kind of data are they giving you to substantiate a difference?
What we like them to do is to kind of share like what they believe we're wrong at.
Okay.
And that might be, their value of their full cash value of their home. And they might have data that they have collected somehow. All they got to do is just share what they believe is the data to make their business case. And if it's a reasonable business case, more than likely they can get that appeal through.
And if you are looking for a way to get data, there is a free resource. If you just go to klausteam.com/homebot, and you can sign yourself up for a free wealth management tool that tracks your home value over time and lets you also track your mortgage and those kinds of things. And it gives you some property data that you might be able to use in something like this. So they give you that data. What does that process look like for appeal?
Yeah, then we have what we call the first level of appeals, which is our team. We have an appeals team. They will obviously review your case, and they will meet with you and discuss that. And then again, if it's within what we call the bounds, the upper and lower bounds of that property based upon the sales of your neighborhood or the area, then more than likely we'd go ahead and just say, you know what, we'll make the change.
Yeah, I noticed that you have you've taken a lot of the bureaucracy out of that process.
Yes.
And you've made it more of a human process.
So to me, the office is really to support you as the property owner. We want to have you have the best customer experience with the assessor's office as possible. In fact, you probably don't want to meet the assessor at all. But if you do come to our office, we want to make sure that we're here to support you as a property owner. I mean, my goal is never to gouge you at all. There are services that we all enjoy that government provides, and we have to pay for those services, from education to infrastructure to public safety. We want all those, right? And all of us have to kind of pay our fair share. So we want to make sure that you feel like you're paying your fair share and that we're in alignment with what you believe is correct. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do in the assessor's office.
So what changes are you, in your organization, what changes are you looking to make moving forward as the assessor?
Well, I have this really great idea where I would love to create what's called a home improvement calculator.
Okay.
That's somewhat coming because of that limited property value Prop 117. one of the triggers that the assessor's office actually is required to do based upon statute is that if you do a home improvement on your property and that home improvement exceeds 15% of your full cash value, that's going to trigger something called a Rule B. And this is one of the only times the assessor actually does something with the limited property value, is that we're going to reset that line in the sand that you had from 2015.
Okay.
And what that means potentially is that your limited property value that you've enjoyed for years is going to potentially see a bump up.
Okay.
Which may not be good when you get your property tax bill. So now if I create this home improvement calculator where I'm going to do this and I can add, my improvements, and again, the non-disclosure will be, don't take this as gospel, but it's just a tool that you can see how much home improvement can I do that's below that 15%.
Below the threshold.
So we don't trigger that Rule B. So that would be one of the tools that I would, it's one on my to-do list in the future.
I don't think people would be upset with that.
I think it'd be great to have a tool like that, right? That would help these property owners understand.
How much can I do without increasing
Because sometimes I get a phone call on my cell phone from an angry property owner and say, Eddie, why did my property tax increase like double? And of course, I go onto the system and I'll say, oh, you added a new bedroom and it was greater than 15% of your full cash value. That triggered this Rule B. And of course, they'll say, I didn't know that. How come no one told me that this was going to happen to me? So, and that would be one thing that I'd like to create. That would be a huge plus or benefit to the public on that. The other thing that we're going to do in the office more and more of is that we are creating a lot of what I call educational videos. What does the assessor office, does? What is this complex property tax code? What does it mean? Like our discussion about the full cash value limited property act. We have some very creative, animated educational videos that helps explain at a high level all these complex things in a very layman's kind of language. So we're doing, which is great because
I like we said before, there's a lot that people just don't understand.
Exactly. So we're doing a lot more of that. I feel like our office is more in the education part. And in fact, this last year, the new legislature that came in, literally 50% of those legislators were freshmen. They have never probably understood or have any grasp of property tax law in Arizona. So we're down there meeting with them, educating them on.
Was there a requirement for them to watch your videos?
I would love them to, but we're making friends because now they feel like, because they're policymakers and lots of bills, they see hundreds and hundreds of bills come through. They may not have the expertise in these areas of property tax law. So we're down there helping educate them a lot and understanding, hey, this bill is good. This bill is really bad, and so forth. So
and then you're giving them feedback on how to make those a little bit better.
And so if they're creating property tax law that's net new and they feel like it's a great idea, it's going to be the best thing since sliced bread or whatever, and I'm like, that's really not, and here's why. And they go, oh, a light clicks. Thank you, Eddie, and your team for sharing that information with me. We will not do it that way. And so
it's an interesting department because it really is more of a service-based because you guys don't have a stake in what those LPVs are, whereas the Treasurer's Office does.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of in a different set there.
Yeah, and again, it was never my dream that I would run legislation at all, because in the way I look at our office is we're going to execute on good property tax law and we're going to execute on bad property tax law. And what I'm hoping is that the ones that are bad, that if I can look at a business case to present to the legislature and say, this is why I believe this property tax law is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I consider a good way to reform it and present that case, then I think we're going to get a win-win from that. Because now the legislature come back, oh, Eddie, thank you for enlightening us. And we would be glad to, move this legislation forward. So that's what I'm seeing that we're becoming more and more active in, is that education of our legislatures in reforming our complex property tax laws.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on over here and answer these questions, educate people. If people wanted to dive in deeper and see some of those videos and reach out to you guys, where would they find the videos? Are they on YouTube? Are they on the website?
They're on our website, and they're also on YouTube. So we also have a Maricopa County Assessor YouTube channel.
Okay.
And you'll be able to see all those wonderful educational videos there.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it as well.
Thanks for spending time with us this week at State 48 Homeowner, the ins and outs of owning an Arizona home. You can connect with us for more information, submit topics you'd like us to discuss further, and you can see relevant videos, give us feedback, answer your real estate questions, and more at state48homeowner.com.